Everyone, and welcome back to the afternoon session of our final day of the Prison Education Program Subcommittee. So I just wanted to start out with just a few comments. So I did send the language to the subcommittee that we're working on today, and I noted where we've taken temperature checks, and I want to reiterate that I do not take things personally that I said during the subcommittee. I also want to clarify and really definitively state that I have not had any off the record substantive conversations with a subcommittee member about the regulatory issues at hand. I scheduled a meeting on October 29th with a Department of Education staff person and Stan and Belinda to discuss the subcommittee report out to the main committee. Consequently, Stan was not available to make that meeting. When Stan provided his availability to speak with me through email, I responded by CCing the Department of Education staff member and Belinda that I would return Stan's call. Subsequently, I was able to call Stan one-on-one, where we exchanged polite conversation with the main focus of the discussion, the main focus of the approximately 5-minute discussion being the process for the subcommittee report out to the main committee. And so I will defer to my colleague Steve Finley and OGC to discuss more of my role and the general role of the subcommittee.
All right, thanks, Aaron. I think we want to respond to some of the comments that at least have raised the question as to whether there's a conflict of interest with the department's role on the subcommittee. And I will say that's the first time I have ever heard that suggestion. If it will help to clarify, the department does have two different functions here. We're a member of the subcommittee, and Aaron represents the department's constituency, in the comments that he makes. And just like the rest of the subcommittee members do in between sessions, he's getting feedback from his constituency on how the department's positions should be expressed and discussed in the subcommittee meetings. But separate and apart from that, a significant amount of department staff serve a support role for the subcommittee writ large, where we're providing background reg text. We are providing proposed changes that we think reflect a tentative recommendation from the department along with statutory requirements. And that is done to further the discussions. We've had meetings with subcommittees before that start out with pretty much no material being provided, when folks would just have a general discussion, and the feedback was always consistently that it seemed like the most productive parts of those meetings would take place later when the department started providing exactly those types of materials to underscore and support the discussions. And the goal in the subcommittee is to collect differing viewpoints and to inform the overall process with the backgrounds that everyone's expertise brings to them. So if some of what is presented feels like your comments are not being heard or expressed, our goal is to capture them somehow so they can be presented to the full committee. And we also note that the department is not one of the presenters to the full committee. So that's another area where we think it gives the subcommittee more control over how the report out is expressed. So thank you for that.
Stan.
I would thank you, Steve and Aaron, for those opening comments. I would just like to clarify that on all the documents that I have regarding who is on the subcommittee, Aaron Washington is not listed as one of the subcommittee members, and is not listed as representing a constituency on the Prison Education Programs Subcommittee. I just checked. That's according to the PDF document that I received upon being, nominated to this committee, and that's also still what is the PDF on the NEGREG website. It does not list Aaron's name as a subcommittee member on the site. So what you just mentioned about Aaron having the ability to weigh in on this conversation would effectively be incorrect.
Aaron?
Um, I think that we can move the conversation forward with the statements that have been made previously. I would point the members of the public that are listening in, and also subcommittee members, to our negotiated rulemaking website. If you pull up a search engine and type 2020-2021 negotiated rulemaking, it should be the first link. If you scroll all the way, part way to the bottom, you will see Pell Grants for Prison Education Programs, parentheses PEP subcommittee, parentheses virtual. The first link you'll have there is subcommittee members. It's a link to a PDF, and there my name is listed as U.S. Department of Education, Aaron Washington, Office of Post-Secondary Education Subcommittee Leader, and then it says Ronald Sand, Office of General Counsel. So that there is documentation on that publicly available website with my name on it. And
Stan?
There is also documentation on that same site that lists the full committee members as well as the subcommittee members. And that was the document that was provided to me upon my acceptance to the committee. And it does not list your name on that. So if you go to the full committee list, which includes the subcommittee list, your name is not on there.
Thank you for your feedback, Stan. I think we can probably reflect that in the comments. Vanessa, would you mind pulling up the comments and going to 668 point? Well, actually, can you pull up the documents just in general and at the top of the document? We'll give Vanessa a second to do that. And I'll, after we pull it up to screen share, we can add a comment bubble. Thank you, Vanessa. So at the top, so just right there, maybe at the 600.2 definition, anywhere in there, we can put a comment bubble to 1110, and then Stan, can you repeat that? What would you like to go in that comment bubble?
So on your NEGREG site, if you go to the list of the full committee, your name is not listed on there.
Okay.
And furthermore, if you want to make the argument that Steve just made, that you are a member of this subcommittee, it's still the subcommittee that decides what language gets put in there. So even if Aaron were to have a voice, which just again points to his conflict, but even if he was to have the voice on there, his voice shouldn't rule. So it shouldn't be his voice that decides what language gets put in there, which is what's happened, which is the Department of Ed deciding what language gets put in there, instead of the subcommittee voting, temperature checking to see what language gets put in there.
Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Stan. I appreciate those comments, and others at the department do as well. The subcommittee is a working group that supports the work of the larger committee. And so one way to think of this is this working document that's provided for our discussion to record the different positions of the subcommittee members is just that. It's a working document. And the goal is to then provide, the collective opinions of the subcommittee to the full committee. Consensus is nice, but it's the consensus and vote tallying from the subcommittee is a little bit different than it operates in the full committee. But thank you for those comments. And our goal, I think for this session is going to be to make sure that the document captures the different impressions and comments that we receive from the subcommittee members, particularly where there are not agreements. Thank you.
Dr. McTeer.
I don't want to belabor this point, but I do agree with Stan on this issue, specifically because only two, I believe it's two, myself and Dr. Andrees are the only voting members on the main committee, and we are outnumbered. If we look at the weight of the subcommittee versus the main committee, we are outnumbered. And so with that, I do think that there is a concern about the things that we're proposing is not being added in the document. I specifically remember yesterday we were figuring out one specific definition that was taken away. And so I do agree with Stan. I do think that some of the points that we are trying to make somehow miraculously disappears, and then we have to argue to say, put it back in. And this document has become messy. So that's point one. Point two, we are on day 3 with 2 hours left. And so I really want to make sure that we tackle some of these other issues before our clock runs out. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Kim?
Thank you. Erin, I'm not sure if this was put into the document or not. I know that one of the points that started the conversation was the oversight entity, and you gave your explanation from the department's view as to what that meant from the DOC perspective and the act that they have surrounding them. Is that put in the document so that the main committee, when they get this and see it, they can understand that we had hoped for one thing, but due to these restrictions, this is the conversation?
Vanessa, I'm not sure if Vanessa had a chance to capture that before the break, but Vanessa, if you could capture Kim's comment, just anywhere on the oversight entity definition.
I think that would help with this to give the full picture. Thank you.
Stan.
Before we move on, I just want to give Vanessa a chance to capture that. Kim, could you state what you would like to go in the comment bubble, please? One more time.
Yes. So the oversight entity position that the subcommittee had hoped for to have multiple groups weigh in on that as a possibility this is what we hoped for. I don't know if I'm going to give you the right language because you'll have to probably repeat what you had said, Erin.
You know what I can definitely also like kind of, edit it after, like I think I understand what you're trying to say. So I think essentially, Kim, we can just say, yeah, we had hoped for more collaboration, but there is, so Vanessa, you can say collaboration, but there is a statutory definition of the oversight entity already defined. Kim, is that okay?
Yeah, with the DOC, and mention the act that they would be up against, trying to enforce. You mentioned that earlier.
The act, the law, the act.
The DOC has an act that they would have to go to have. That we can't do this oversight committee the way or entity the way we want it because there's an act, a legislative act that the DOC is bumping up against.
Okay, you can just say the Higher Education Act, Vanessa.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's totally okay. Thank you.
Stan?
Thank you. So to Kim's point, I ended mentioning that I was not clear, and I think Kim is asking that it be stated clearly what your position was that you mentioned right before we closed. So, and I mean, before we closed, I was also asking for that clarity. And, you know, if we're presenting this, we would need, I think Kim is asking, so it is noted that there is clarity on why you're saying that we can't take this position. I might also add once again that it should be up to the subcommittee. If the subcommittee says that clowns should wear a red hat and nose, and that's, you know, what needs to be done, and that's what we vote on, and that's what, you know, that's what we collectively say should be included, that's what we should present to the main committee. So again, I don't understand why the subcommittee's position is to include this, regardless if it is against statute. It should go to the main committee as what we voted for, as what the consensus of our group said should be included. And the main committee can then go in to say that it's not going to work. But from us, this is what we want to include. Like I'm not understanding why we can't have, you know, that's not, I thought that's what we were here for. And again, I would like clarity as to why you're saying that it can't be included.
Aaron?
I would like you to provide clarity at this moment as to why you're saying it can't be included.
I just want to really start out by saying, before I respond, that I really want to ensure that we continue to engage in respectful conversation. I am really here to answer your questions, and I will answer when you ask me to answer. I was intending to answer, but I really want to make sure that the conversation remains, I hope, respectful, at least between the subcommittee members. Stan, this is a statutory provision. Our Office of General Counsel has proposed to put the entire prison education definition into Subpart P, because we didn't want to repeat throughout. From the first session, we had repeated the appropriate State Department of Corrections or other entity that is responsible for overseeing correctional facilities, or the Federal Bureau of Prisons, repeatedly in the regulation. And we thought that it would be best to condense that down into an abbreviated term, oversight entity, in order to shorten the regulation, in order to not have to have that same phrase repeated over and over again in the regulation.
Dr. McTier.
Along the lines of that, so if this document is supposed to be a reflection of our subcommittee, then based on our earlier conversation around the may and must component, I do want this document to reflect our stance on switching that language to may, because I know earlier you were saying that's what the department is wanting to do. And if you're not voting on the main committee, then it should be, we will present this as may, and then we can send it to the main committee to do that. So I do think, yeah, I hear you that you spoke with the Department of Ed rep, but for us, we are challenging, I am challenging, saying that we want to change that language back to may, because that's what's reflected in the language that was presented to us. And so that's an example of how, you know, we're presenting something or putting something forward, and our words are not, or our thoughts are not adequately being captured. And so we kind of feel, let me not say we, I kind of feel like I'm being pushed up against a wall and sitting here twiddling my thumbs and wasting my time by my thoughts not being captured correctly or being glossed over just for the sake of the department's clarity or whatever they want to do. If we're here to provide the intellect, the knowledge, we are the individuals on the ground doing the work. So we're trying to tell you all what's going to work and what doesn't. It doesn't make any sense for the Department of Ed to ignore us because it just doesn't make sense to them. It makes sense to the people who are doing the work, boots on the ground. So I do stand behind Stanley and his statement. I agree 100%. I do think I do feel as if it's kind of been a waste of time because I see things that are talked about and then they're not added anymore, or they disappear. And then we have to go back through this whole cycle again, arguing. Just wanted to put that out there.
Aaron?
Thank you for that, Dr. Mateer. This document is just for, this was just the Department of Education's, document that, that we were working on in between sessions to update the language, during the sessions to update the language from our perspective. If you join Stan and Belinda in presenting, and potentially Kim in presenting during the main committee, you can present an entirely different document. So your document can say May, so your and it doesn't have to be in a comment bubble. It could be, your document could actually say May. The definition of oversight entity in your document can actually be the proposed definition in the blue comment bubble. Vanessa, if you can expand that, I think it's 11.8. I think it's 11.8 one, the middle one. Yeah, that your document can actually have that, as opposed to, or maybe it's not that one, but your document can have all of that language. Added in there, and that's what you can send to the main committee for your report.
Stan?
So I don't feel that the response in terms of my asking for a clarification clarified. So what I heard was that we are adding that to make things less repetitive. That's not giving a reason why you're not adding the recommendation of this advisory committee. And I still don't, what would be the reason for not adding the additional language of us adding an advisory committee that advises the decision of the DOC or BOP?
I'm not sure if you were able to join at that point, Stan, but I provided the rationale. Were you here for my discussion of the Federal Advisory Committee? The limitations?
I was here for the last 30 minutes, and you provided a definition as to why you're not including the advisory committee. And I'm asking for clarification on why we're not including that text.
Okay, so we appreciate and share the subcommittee's interest in establishing a way to get stakeholder input. However, we have unresolved questions about how a formal advisory committee would be operationalized. We have learned that it would require the Bureau of Prisons to be subject to the Federal Advisory Committee Act, which creates a separate set of operational considerations. And we have questions about how feasible it is to stand up such a formal committee in every single state so quickly until we have the opportunity to fully explore those specific issues. It is not something Ed could commit to supporting at the main table. We have proposed instead language that we will see momentarily. We still appreciate the work of the subcommittee to encourage us to expand stakeholder representation in the process.
Stan?
So thank you for that. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Kim was asking for that clarification. But yes. So she was asking that clarification be added in so we can properly explain that to the full committee. But further, I would like to add that is it a belabored thing that we ask, nonprofit entities to have a board or a committee and have advisory members? It's troubling to me that or concerning to me that Ed wants to add all these other tasks and things to do for other entities, but adding this piece feels like too much. I mean, is it, that's our argument against some of the other points, is that it seems like we're asking too much of DOC or asking too much of, within this entity. So what I heard was it seems too difficult. But to me, that's not a sufficient response. It's not that we can't do it. It's that it seems too difficult. That's not sufficient. That's not me. That's not we can't do it. That's I don't want to do it. But it needs to be done. So it should be done. And it should be upon us to decide whether we want to propose that to be done.
Kim?
Before Kim, I just wanted to say, Kim, can you clarify? Were you talking about the Federal Advisory Committee Act or the Higher Education Act? So what I was referring to was the definition of the actual oversight entity, and that's in the Higher Education Act. But the rationale I provided about the Bureau of Prisons being held to the Federal Advisory Committee Act, that can also be added if you'd like it to be added to the common bubble. I apologize if I confused your point.
No, I should have had the right wording. I just couldn't remember what you called it. The federal advising piece, I think, is good for the main committee to hear so they can understand the logic why that is a hindrance right now. But what I would like to add is maybe this is another piece that we can put into the bubble that says, we're startup of these programs. I understand, 2023 is right around the corner. And maybe this isn't something that can be in the initial startup, like we've put 2 years on the other pieces. Maybe this is something that we could say, 2, 3 years, depending on how long it would take for the Federal Advisory Act to be reviewed. How long would it take Federal Bureau of Prisons to come on board with having this type of oversight entity, built? I think it's important to have all these stakeholders at the table. I understand logistics of it, but maybe we put a timetable on it for onboarding of this new idea for 2 or 3 years, so that it's in the language that this needs to be part of it, and we wouldn't have to wait for the next time statute is looked at to bring it back in.
Stan? I guess Stan put his hand back down. Aaron?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted. Sorry about
okay.
that.
Sorry.
I was mentioning that, so one, thank you, Kim. And I was going to mention how on a number of occasions, Marissa, for instance, mentioned how providing a certain metric would be difficult for DOC to do. And so if we were just simply going off of, we shouldn't do this because it's going to be difficult for DOC or BOP to do it, then there's several things that we wouldn't have included, but yet we included them despite, there was, we mentioned that it would be difficult for DOC to do. So now you're simply saying that it will be too difficult for BOP to do it. But we've been saying that on a number of occasions. So now you want to try to use it to your advantage to not include something.
Aaron?
I think, Stan, I just wanted to add, we're asking Vanessa to add a lot of stuff all at once. So I just wanted to add to the document Kim's point, and we hear your points, and if you'd like that added as well, we can add another comment bubble. But I think with 1.5 hours left for the subcommittee, we have to move to the next section. So I would have to move us to a temperature check for this. If your thumb is down, just please raise your hand, and so because I don't think we can see everybody on the screen right now. So if your thumb is down, we've had substantial conversation about this. So just raise your hand, and your comments will, I think that we can move to the next section. So Sophia.
I see one hand up, which is Stan.
All right, and if you put your hand up right now, it's the reason that the hands are going, the reason that we're putting.
Kim is also up now.
Okay.
Sorry to interject. What are we raising our hands for specifically?
This is a temperature check for, this is the temperature check for section 668.235. That includes all the definition, cross references, and oversight entity definition as it's displayed on the screen right now. And so if you do not agree, Sophia, can you see all the subcommittee members?
I can see that there are 3 hands up.
Okay.
3, those would be Stan, Kim, and Dr. McTier.
Okay. And I think we've tried to note all the concerns. If they're not noted, please let us know. But if they are noted, I think we should move on to the 236. Does the hands up mean, okay, thank you. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, Vanessa, can we go to 236? Okay, so here, what have we done here? Can you keep scrolling down, Vanessa? Oh, yeah, stop right there, please. You go back up a little bit to H. Okay, so while the statute, H is the language about offering education to a student where there would be a prohibition on that student obtaining licensure or employment. And the statutory language restricts prison education programs from offering programs that lead to licensure or employment in a job or occupation that typically prohibits licensure or employment for formerly incarcerated students. We agree that we do not want the Department of Corrections to read that restriction too broadly. As is, the proposed amendatory language tells the Department of Corrections to only prohibit enrolling a student if a specific state or federal law would prohibit a student from licensure or employment. We do not read this and would not interpret this as including good moral character provisions or other provisions where a licensure board might have discretion. We think that it is more appropriate to include language and guidance describing that interpretation, given the variance in these types of provisions and the need for further elaboration on all the provisions. That I stated. And so I'll pause there and open it up for.
I see no hands. And I now see a hand, Dr. McTier.
So what you just read is obviously not on the screen. So has that been sent? That statement been sent?
No, the statement has not been sent.
Okay, so because it was a lot, so I'm trying to.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to process.
Do you want me to take it point by point, and then we talk about each point?
I think that'll be easier because this is a big piece, and then that statement from the Department of Ed was rather lengthy, and I'm trying to listen and read again.
Agreed. All right. While the statutory, I'll just do the first bullet, okay? While the statutory language restricts prison education programs from offering programs that lead to licensure or employment in a job or occupation that typically prohibits licensure or employment for formerly incarcerated individuals, we agree that we do not want the Departments of Corrections to read that restriction too broadly.
No hands.
Okay.
Wait, never mind, Stan.
So you agree that you don't want, you say Department of Corrections to read it too broadly?
Yes. Okay. Should I continue, Stan?
I'll have more on that, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. All right. As is, the proposed amendatory language tells DOCs to only prohibit enrolling a student if a specific state or federal law would prohibit a student from licensure or employment. We do not read this and would not interpret this as including good moral character provisions or other provisions where a licensure board might have discretion. I'll pause there.
Stan.
So I'll just again point to the point that I made yesterday, where there has already been instances where there was a ban in place. There was prohibition in place, and yet a formerly incarcerated person still surpassed and got licensed under that board. So in that case, you are eliminating that possibility because the person can't even pursue that type of degree because there's already a prohibition in place. So there have already been instances where people have beat them, and those are the cases that change the prohibitions. That state now has changed how they proceed against formerly incarcerated individuals. We are, by adding that, you're hindering that process. And that is why, yesterday I say it would be better just to not include that additional text.
Dr. McTier.
I would also agree that many of this, if they're a current student, they won't sit before the board anyway. So typically a person goes up for their licensure after they've graduated. So this text would essentially prevent them from actually taking college courses. Those are two different things, right? We want to allow our students, if they choose, to take the college courses in a specific field, right? There might be some stipulations depending on the type of crime, but to specifically say if they can't get it from or get approved from the board, which is outside of the institution in and of itself, that's a problem. And so I agree with Stan on this point, just with that added addition and knowledge.
Marissa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I completely agree with Stan and Dr. McTier. I think there are enough barriers for people leaving correctional facilities that we don't need to put that in there. And I just want that on the record. I don't think that should be in there. I don't think, as a person in education for many years, the last thing I want to do is put barriers on people on what they can do. So I would like that in there too.
Sophia, if you wouldn't mind if I jump in, I just want to make sure Vanessa is able to record these. I believe we have a comment from yesterday, Vanessa, that said that Stan recommended. Yeah, can you add Marissa?
And I would agree with Stan's bubble from yesterday that the language is kept open.
Okay, all right. So Marissa agrees. Dr. McTier, can you clarify that Stan has another point in there, prefer to keep the language open? Do you agree with that as well, so we can capture both of you in this comment?
Yes.
Okay. Marissa and Dr. McTier as well, please, Vanessa. And when you close out of that, I know Kim has her hand up, so I want to expand to see Kim's entire comment, because it kind of makes it seem like Kim is saying remove 1 and 2, but that's not what the comment really said. This, the blue one, yeah. Okay, yeah. So I'm sorry, Sophia. Back to you.
Thank you, Aaron. Angie was next.
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering if we might add that it's that whoever's providing the program informs the incarcerated person that there is a possibility that they would not be eligible, even if they take this coursework, that they might not be eligible to be licensed because of state regulations or things like that. So while we may open it up for them to take those courses if they like, they should know that there's a good possibility, given the current legislation, that they might not be able to be licensed. And I think doing that on the front end would be really critical, so that a student doesn't go through the whole thing and then realize, what, I spent all this time, doing this and I can't get licensed.
Thank you. Vanessa, I think on that 1020 comment, I think Terrell had made that proposal. Can you open up the 1020? Yeah. Can you add Dr. Piccioni? Is it okay if I say plus Dr. Piccioni after Terrell's comment? Okay. Yeah. And Vanessa, can you put that, I'm sorry, can you put that on the same line just so we know that it doesn't, that, so Kim's comment was totally different, but it was just the same. Yep, all right, thank you. Yep, perfect, thank you.
And the next would be Stan.
So I plus one that as well, and I think that was something that Belinda also had language on as well, in terms of informing the student that of the possibility of a ban, but not denying them. I would just also just again like to point to why, you know, we've expanded this language of this particular point, yet our expansion of oversight definition is deemed, you know, not plausible. Um, just pointing that out. It seems okay for Ed to add additional language, but for us to add additional language, there seems to be a problem with that.
Kim, was your hand still up or did you take it down?
I took it down because I think it's okay to be addressed like it was yesterday. Thank you.
And Marissa, same.
I just want to say something, and I don't want to get into the weeds because I can do that very easily, but I think this could be part of the disclosure statements in the beginning. That's just something I think it's important, but I don't think there need to be barriers written into this.
Okay, I think we've captured your support. I'm sorry, Sophia. I just wanted to make sure. I think we've captured your support for removing 1 and 2, Marissa. I believe we have. Yep, we did. Yeah. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
And now Dave.
Sure, mine's short. I just wanted to clarify that the disclosure, and I think this is what Marissa was alluding to, the disclosure is already being proposed that the schools would be required to inform students that they were aware of prohibitions on employment in the area that the student was being trained for. So I think if I'm getting this correct, Marissa, your proposal would be that that disclosure sort of is that we would build on that disclosure to allow the student to make this decision one way or the other. Okay. But just wanted to be clear that the disclosure itself is already something that's in the language that's being proposed.
Thank you, David. So would that mean that you would want to add your support to Sorrell's point that we allow the student to disclose or affirmatively acknowledge that they understand that there's a prohibition and still enroll? Is that I just want to make sure. Okay, all right. Can you say plus Marissa there, Vanessa?
Kim.
I do have a new thought. It's not really new. It's just kind of building on what I've said before, is that is there some way we could put in here, and I can send you language regarding this. I know Ed has done this before in language where they encourage institutions to basically go outside their comfort zones and offer this kind of program, knowing that it won't lead to licensure. Is there some way we could encourage institutions, though it says that they will not offer education? We get back to that typically involves prohibits, but I think you could have schools that would still read that as, we don't want to take a chance on that. We'd rather be conservative. And if Ed puts something in there that says that it's encouraged, then that might open the window for some to actually open those conversations at schools with their academic areas. And schools could actually take that back to their accreditors and say, we're encouraged to do this as well. We don't have to, but we're encouraged to look at it.
Vanessa, can you add that as a comment bubble?
And next we will have Stan.
I would just plus one that and think and add to it that maybe it could be even a dear colleague explanation of that. And I mean, I'm I'm curious, and I don't want to belabor if it's going to take too much time, but how do people that read these see it? Will the Dear Colleague be like an additional link that they can easily see that there's additional information that they can find on this piece? If that is the case, then yes, I would, be for a Dear Colleague. If it's hard to find Dear Colleagues, then I think maybe we need to put it in the language.
Dave, would you like to speak to that?
Sure, it's a good question, Stan. Dear Colleague letters are guidance that are published by the department and published on FSA's Knowledge Center. And the Knowledge Center is the website that all financial aid administrators and staff of financial aid offices go to for information about the federal student aid programs. It is a well understood resource. It is easily searchable. And if someone is seeking to find information about prison education programs and everything that we've published on it, FSA does make it as easy as we possibly can to obtain that information. And we typically also include information that's as substantive as what you're describing in the Federal Student Aid Handbook, which is a compilation of all the guidance that the department has published on a given topic. The other place that the department may publish guidance would be in the preamble to a Federal Register notice, where we explain our rationale for a particular policy, for a particular set of regulations.
Kim.
Yes, thank you, David. Just to follow up for Stan, if I, for instance, am looking at the handbook for this particular topic, then sometimes there are pieces broken out in the sidebar that would point me in the direction of that Dear Colleague letter or electronic announcement. Hope that helps.
Stan, do you have something to say, or is that your hand just still? Okay.
Sorry, that was still.
That's okay. No further hands.
All right, thank you for that, David. I think what we should do now is move to a temperature check on the language that you see before you. This is actually, it would be I think, Vanessa, can you scroll down? Let me see. I think that's all for the, yep. So this would be a temperature check on the entire part. I think Vanessa's starting to read my mind. The entire part, 668.236, and that's the definition of a prison education program. So your hands up right now are for if you do not agree for this temperature check. So I see Sophia. Well, I'll let
yes,
Sophia.
Stan's hand is up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, mine is up because I believe that additional definition for licensure needs to be removed.
Okay.
Kim's hand is also up, and same with Dr. McTier.
Okay. Are the comments already captured in the documents? If they're not, then please let us know. We have for Stan to remove 1 and 2 in there. We have I don't know if we got Kim's yet. Oh, I think we did get Kim's. Did we get Kim's? I think it says 11:10. We got Kim's, and then Dr. McTier, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nothing to add.
Okay.
Kim, did you have something to add? Your hand is still up.
No, just for the comments is the only reason I'm a hands down, or thumbs down.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Vanessa, if you could go to 668.238. The reason that we are skipping 237 is because yesterday we got general agreement on the accreditation requirements. So this is the application requirements. You scroll down. What were the changes made there? Oh, Terrell he said that the language there were some grammatical errors in the language, so we fixed that. And we've also said, this is where number 8 is where we've said when I talked about this earlier, in order for the department to calculate enrollment post-release or earnings, or completion rates, we would have to know from the Bureau of Prisons or State Departments of Corrections the release date of the confined or incarcerated individual that participated in the prison education program. And so here is where we've added language, and you'll see it actually 3 places in as we go through the document, and that's number 8. So documentation that the institution has entered into an agreement with the oversight entity to obtain data about transfer and release dates of incarcerated individuals, which will be reported to the Department of Education. So the BOP, DOC, or other entity would report the release date to the Department of Education. And again, you'll see this in 3 different places. It'll be so this is the first place you see it right here is under the application for the first prison education program at the first 2 additional locations. We'll also see this come up in the second or subsequent mini application, and then we'll also see this come up under the reporting requirements. And it's the same text. It's just to ensure that there are no loopholes in this information being reported to the department. Vanessa, can you scroll down a little bit? Yeah, a little bit more. Yep, there, perfect. So you'll see it right there too. So for the second or subsequent eligible prison education program, you see how we have the kind of toned down reporting requirements under 600.21, and we also have that. We also have a requirement that documentation that the institution has entered into an agreement with the oversight entity to obtain data about transfer and release dates is also required here. So when, after the department has approved that first prison education program at the first 2 additional locations, they'll still have to provide this documentation to us as well. And with that said, I would like to move us to a temperature check here on 668.238. I see David is on camera. David, did you want to say something before we do the temperature check? Oh, okay, all right.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, all right. So can we get a temperature check? So we've made the grammatical change to the that Terrell recommended and added in just some more language about release date. So can we take a temperature check on this language?
I do not see any hands up.
Thank you. Vanessa, can we move to section 668.240? So here we have our general counsel, Steve Finley, has made a recommendation to add to B, if the secretary initiates a limitation or termination, the institution will submit a teach out plan. And Steve, would you mind, you want to give a little bit more background on that?
Yeah, I mean, the most recent change was just saying that it's the start of taking such an action that would produce the requirement to get a teach out plan, because it could take a while for a limitation or termination action, administrative appeal, to run its course, and it would be in the best interest of the students to already have a teach out plan in place to deal with that outcome. Aaron, did you want me just to more generally discuss why we need to provide an administrative appeal there, or was that just the new part?
Or if you want to, I mean, yeah, it's up to you, Steve.
Yeah, and this is how the department would have to limit or take away the institution's ability to stop offering a fully approved prison education program.
Thank you, Steve. I want to give folks a second to like read over it, and then I'll move us to a temperature check. So Sophia, are we having any hands about this?
No, there are no hands.
So can we go to a temperature check on this section?
Yes.
If you have any objections, please raise your hand and state why.
I see no hands.
Okay. And let's move to, and I think if we finished a little early, we can obviously, go back with, because this is the final section, the best interest piece that we wanted to talk about. So we can go back to discuss any other area of the regulation that that any subcommittee member proposes after this, depending on how fast we get through best interest. So 668.241. I do have some points on this. Let's see. All right, so we appreciate the concerns of we appreciate the concerns over the use of recidivism rate, but we also believe that well, maybe I'll save that for the recidivism. But here in the green, we've added with engagement from relevant stakeholders who must include, among others, incarcerated students, organizations representing incarcerated students and individuals, and accrediting agencies. And that was, if you can scroll down a little bit, Vanessa, that was, you can stop there. So I think that was included in several of the indicators yesterday, but now that's included as a lead into the paragraph. So Vanessa, can you scroll back up? Thank you. We're essentially saying that that the Bureau of Prisons and Department of Corrections or other entities that set best interest determination must include an assessment with engagement from relevant stakeholders that are as outlined there for all of the indicators.
We have Stan, followed by Dr. McTier.
So help me understand why the stakeholders would be acceptable here, but not acceptable in the definition of oversight entity.
The definition of an oversight entity is so if we were to take out oversight entity, we would have to put in that entire phrase. That is in the statute. That in those entities make the determination whether a prison education program can operate in one of the correctional facilities that they oversee.
So I still am not sure I understand, why they are able to be included here, or why I should say not able, because I don't think that's the correct usage of words. Why you want them included here, but you don't want them included in oversight.
Steve, is that something you wanted to address?
Actually, what I wanted to do is announce that Ron Sand's going to take the lead for OGC on this provision, and he may respond.
Oh, okay. So is Ron on? Ron, do you want to say something to this, or should we go to Dr. McTier? Dr. McTier, since I don't hear or see Ron. There you go, Ron. Okay. Dr. McTier?
Yes, so this is a play on words, and this doesn't do what it is that I want it to do. It says, in oversight entities' determination that a prison education program is operating in the best interest of students must include an assessment, and then there's a comma, with engagement. I'm not a fan of this must, because that's not what the statutory language says. It says may. So I want to change it back to may. Include, I believe it's, I think that's the part that says, it says may. So I want to add that may back in there because that's what the statutory language says. And I understand the Department of Ed's stance or whatever, great. But for us, I wanted to say may.
I think Vanessa has noted that. Dr. McTier, thank you for your comment.
And Steve, I'm just checking, your hand is still up. You're not part of this conversation, correct? Okay. Let's go to Ron and then to Stan.
Hi, I just want to kind of add in terms of the draft language that's here is a requirement that certain factors must be considered doesn't take away the authority of the state corrections department or the Federal Bureau of Prisons to ultimately make a determination as to what's in the best interest of students. So it's saying that these factors must be considered, but it's not changing the fact that the responsibility to make these decisions still will rest with these oversight entities.
Stan?
So I was advised by an advisory committee of individuals that helped me understand this a little bit better. And it is my understanding that the may that was in the actual statutory language means that we have the option to include or not include any of these. The language was in the law was intentionally said may to allow the regulatory process to decide what should be included. And to that point, you have a group of experts here informing you that recidivism should not be used, and that we should stay with what is used to by accrediting agencies to generally describe what is metrics that are gathered for normal higher education programs, and recidivism is not one of those things. The law intentionally left that up for people like us to come in and help make that regulatory decision. And I want to drop that on the table, that it is very much up to us to decide whether we should include or not include something. And we've kind of pretty consensus around not including recidivism.
If I can jump in there really
Yes,
quick. I just respond, that can be part of your proposal to the main committee. So if you submit a mandatory language, this exact document, and you cross out must and put may, that can be your presentation to the main committee.
Dr. McTeer?
So I also want to just kind of push back a little bit on from the Department of Ed standpoint. How can we add and not take away? Doesn't make any sense. So if we're able to add other metrics to this piece, then we should also have the ability to take things away. So with that being said, because the statutory language says may, I want to propose that we remove the recidivism piece out of it. Basically, the first four we remove completely out of this document.
I think Vanessa's adding that now.
Kim?
Thank you. So Belinda, chime in here if I don't say this correctly. You had recommended out to the committee that we read through a document where you had suggested that the must be on certain pieces of this section. So let me come at this from a financial aid perspective and from listening to all of you through this subcommittee. You don't want DOC to have full authority to do what to only do what they want to do. So that's why we had expanded and wanted stakeholders to be a part of this. If we leave may in there, then they have the ability they may go out and get those stakeholders involved, they may not. if it says they must, then they have to get them involved in making these determinations at the best interest of the students. So I like the word must because I want those other people involved in the conversation, but I don't like that it's in a must sentence where it says all of the following below it. I like the idea of breaking this out to each piece and saying must on this or may on this. So in the idea of number 4, with the recidivism, maybe that's a may, and that's the only one in this group that's a may. I like the idea of a must on the rest of them. So I'll just put that out there as something to think about. We want to be inclusive with all of, and Aaron, maybe you can address with the piece where the definition of oversight entity can't include the stakeholders, is that maybe that's tied back to a specific federal advisory to not bump up against that, but we can include it here as someone that the oversight committee, the Bureau of Federal Prisons, could act with those other entities to make the best interest of students. So maybe it's not in one place because of that federal advisory committee issue, but it can be placed here. If that's how I'm interpreting this, let me know.
Aaron, do you want to respond before we move to the other comments?
You know what, Kim? I want to make sure that your suggestion is captured and in a comment bubble, I think we can move to the next speaker. So
Belinda?
Kim, can you just make sure, one second, Sophia, I just want to make sure. So Kim, can you just repeat what you'd like Vanessa to capture, please? Uh-oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yes, I am. Sorry about that. Maybe before we capture my bubble, we could let Belinda speak to it because I think we're on the same page maybe, but she can address it from her perspective and then we can collaboratively make the recommendation.
Belinda.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, what I'm going to say here basically just kind of reiterates the email that I'd sent out to my colleagues, everyone on the subcommittee and Ed last night with regards to clarifying the may/must issue. You know, as I mentioned, you know, the FAFSA Simplification Act did indeed say may. We are seeing language here that says must. From a you know, again, wearing the two hats, former prison education director who worked in ed with accreditation and things of that nature, and now with my hat with Vera, all of those benchmarks that are in there, with the exception of recidivism, are things that accreditation agencies already ask educational institutions to provide that information to accreditation. You know, job placement rates. You know, if students are continuing their education. You know, what is the faculty? You know, what are their credentials and things of that nature. Because that is something that is standard in educational institutions around the country already, and it is something that accreditation agencies look for. I do believe that all of them, with the exception of recidivism, should remain a must, because accreditation agencies are going to say, look, we can't say no to one of these other ones because we've already got these benchmarks that we have every single education institution in the country looking for. And in my letter that I sent to the group last night, I also mentioned that, you know, so I am in alignment with Kim there. You know, if there is, with the latitude with what the FAFSA Simplification Act had said as a may, that, you know, if we can't scrap recidivism altogether, because again, I do not believe that it's something that really shows whether or not a educational program is effective or not, then I definitely would support a may in that. You know, there is language that Ed has provided, listening to us about ways that we could perhaps mitigate that if it does indeed end up being a must. But, you know, on the record, I did say, and I continue that today, that it would be great to either cut recidivism, put it in a section of may if that's not possible, with all the other indicators, again, I just go on the record as saying that I strongly recommend for subcommittee members to not make them Mays, because that would create an accreditation nightmare. Because again, these are things when I did at Payne College and at Claflin University, when we were preparing our reports for accreditation agencies, these were all things that are, standard throughout the country that accreditation agencies ask for. So, so just to sum up, Kim, I am in agreement with what you'd said about a May, if that is possible. Let me know if anyone has any questions, but thank you very much.
Elizabeth has her hand up. Should we hear from her before we move on to Stan and Dr. McTeer?
Is that okay with?
I'm okay with that.
Dr. McTeer, is that okay with you?
Okay,
Sure.
Elizabeth.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I wanted to respond to Belinda's points about what other accrediting agencies require. And yes, many of them do require the reporting on some of those, but it is not a requirement by the department for those items. And in fact, we cannot require specific requirements around student achievement. We do require that they have to have standards related to student achievement, but these specific things related to median earnings for graduates, specific job placement rates, licensure rates, we don't have specific benchmarks in those areas. So just to let you know, it's not necessarily an across the board requirement by accrediting agencies in every single one of the areas that are listed here.
Stan. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. McTeer, then Stan.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that clarification. Really, really helpful. I want us to keep in mind that the point of this right here is saying that the DOC and the Bureau of Justice is going to be responsible for this, right? I just completed an accreditation application and I did not go to the DOC or the Bureau of Justice to submit my accreditation application. I'm going through my institution to do that. And so now to have, again, the Bureau of Justice and or the DOC to see if we operate in the best interest of the students, there's a disconnect. So these metrics, they wouldn't need this information is what I'm saying. And so I'm going to push back again on that. The application is totally different and it goes to someone different than the Department of Justice, excuse me. The other piece to that is, yeah, let me get my thoughts back together because I was listening and then reading something. But for the most part, this whole application process, we have to keep in mind that this is the DOC who will be collecting this information and operating within the best interest of the students. I don't think that they have the capacity, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, the other representative that was supposed to be here has not been here. And that should show a sign that, I mean, it's often difficult to work with those in the DOC, and now to have them carry out all of these expectations, it's just not going to be in the best interest of programs who are interested in starting up.
Stan.
So thank you for all the comments. I just wanted to add a couple points. You know, it sounds like at some point or another, there are different accrediting agencies asking these types of questions to the academic institution. So it would seem repetitive that we're asking them again, because if there are students, the incarcerated students will be just students of the academic institution. So in the overall reporting that the academic institution has to do, they would have to include those students who are incarcerated. So it seems repetitive. One thing that I wanted to point out, and to you know, the other thing is, why are we asking DOC to do this? And I get it. It's in the statute that the oversight entity, you know, was asked to do this. But I would also just like, since we have Elizabeth with us. Elizabeth, what is your perspective on what should be included as benchmarks? Since you've mentioned that some of these are not actual benchmarks that are used by accrediting agencies.
Elizabeth?
I assume I can jump in. Well, they are all required to have benchmarks for student achievement. It's just a matter of the agency determining whether or not it's at the institutional level or whether they set them as an agency. Many of our agencies, in particular, it's much easier for like a programmatic. So let's say they are all training, you know, it's for occupational therapy, and everybody is training for occupational therapy, and it requires licensure. It's much easier for an accrediting agency that's only looking at those programs to set specific benchmarks for completion, placement, and licensure rates. It's much harder for an institutional agency to do that, because generally they have, you know, depending on which agency, it could have, you know, only 2-year institutions, 4-year institutions, many different variables go into that. So a lot of times they're focused more on an institutional level. I would say that many of these items, except for exactly what Belinda had said, many of the other items, except for recidivism rate, would be something that would be within the portfolio of items that they would look at for student achievement, that an accrediting agency would look at. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Stanley, but I'm happy to expound if you need to.
No other hands at this point.
I did just want to mention that we do, and we're really you know, happy to have another person representing the Department of Corrections. Marissa has been with us the entire time, and we're really grateful for her contributions to the subcommittee.
So still no hands.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So we did have some change proposals here, but before we did those, we did have some notes. I know recidivism specifically has been mentioned by several of the subcommittee members, and so we do appreciate the concern raised over the use of recidivism, but we also believe that it is a measure that Congress wanted oversight entities to consider amongst a suite of other metrics in the implementing policy. We've also heard this week and in our last meeting that recidivism rates continue to be a metric that oversight entities think about and place emphasis on. One thing we do not want to do is to permit the use of deeply flawed version of a metric. And to that end, over the course of the subcommittee's meetings, we have incorporated some limitations on how an oversight entity is permitted to define recidivism, excluding recidivism after a reasonable number of years, and excluding less serious examples of recidivism by trying to define, to keep the definition to new felony convictions with U.S. sentencing guidelines. We also have worked to build in substantial amounts of stakeholder engagement, which will allow incarcerated students and their representatives to advise the oversight entities on appropriate definitions, measurements, and emphasis to place on a recidivism metric. I think with that, I would like to move us to some updates that we've made to this definition based on some comments that were made before lunch. And then we can, just in the interest of time, it is 2:18. I just want to make sure that we touch upon several of the updates we made. So Vanessa, can you scroll down just a bit to have 5, and 6, and 7 on there? There you go, 5, 6, and 7. So let's see. For the, give me 1 second, I'm sorry. All right, so for number 8, Belinda had, can you open up that comment bubble right there? If you scroll up a little bit, Vanessa, not that one, but the one above it. just the note, the blue one above it. I'm sorry, I'm not being clear enough. It's like, it says 11-9 Belinda. That one. Yeah. I don't think it's that one either. Maybe scroll down a little. Let me go on my computer. I'm sorry. We were trying to add these to respond to Belinda's point. So essentially what we've done here is we are proposing to add language to the to add whether the institutions ensure that all formerly incarcerated students are able to fully transfer their credits and continue their programs at any location of the institution that offers a comparable program, including the same mode of instruction, barring exceptional circumstances surrounding the student's conviction. And so that was a piece that Belinda had recommended to add, we believe, and then we had more feedback from the subcommittee about what the implications of that could be. So we tried to accommodate or update the regulations to reflect Belinda's recommendation. So I see, I won't take Sophia's job, but I see Stan's hand up, but we also like to hear from Belinda
Yeah.
as well, you know, on the added language to the indicator number 8.
I'm switching devices and I've entered in another device. Can you switch my device, please?
Stan, are you planning to say something or
Yes.
should we go to Belinda? Oh, go ahead. Okay, then go ahead.
No, I'm not. Thank you.
Okay, Belinda then. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to Aaron addressing me. Yes, I appreciate Ed's willingness to work with both recommendations that I had, and I think I know Kim with the any location, everyone's good feedback that we provided this morning. So just wanted to say thank you, Ed, for taking into account everyone's thoughts this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, it was
That's-
just, any other?
There's no other hands, so.
All right, yeah. So I was just trying to find my notes for this, and so yeah. So essentially, that's, you know, we agree that institutions should welcome formerly incarcerated students after release, and the statutory requirement to ensure transferability to one other college in the state doesn't go far enough. So we hope that this does reflect that. I think, Belinda, you confirmed that for us. In regard to academic counseling and advising, I think that is number 7. We appreciate and share the concern about having adequate services and resources for students. However, we think a clarification that institutions may use outside organizations, community partners, and correction agencies to offer that programming is best offered through guidance to institutions about these best practices for serving incarcerated students. We cannot explicitly require that such partnership exists, and we are concerned that language encouraging them to do so in regulation would be confusing both to the institution and to the oversight entity. So I'll pause there for Belinda's feedback, or anybody's feedback, but that was a Belinda recommendation, so anybody's feedback.
Stan.
Yes. So that's saying that, for instance, when a RFP requires that a letter of support be provided for, you know, some partnership that the, you know, RFP is requiring. That's something that's commonly done. So we're saying that it would be challenging to ask them to potentially seek a partnership.
I think the point was we can't explicitly require such partnerships exist.
And why is that?
We are concerned that language encouraging them to do so in regulation would be confusing both to the institution and oversight. So I think the general idea is we explicitly, we can't require them to, and that's, the department has discussed this over the lunch break, and we did say that we would come back to the table and provide the subcommittee with more information on this, but that was the determination made that we cannot explicitly require such partnerships to exist. But we did say that we could potentially provide guidance to institutions. Programming is best offered through guidance institutions as best practices. We could potentially provide guidance as a best practice as opposed to in regulation.
Stan and then Kim.
So when we, as in the department, when you say we, you mean the Department of Ed, and then you additionally said that we, as in the Department of Ed, could provide guidance. Has the Department of Ed run a reentry program before? That's a question to one of my Department of Ed colleagues.
I can't speak to that, Stan.
So you're considering providing guidance on how to run a reentry program, but Ed is not designed nor expert in doing so. And furthermore, why would it be, there's grant applications from, it's a regular occurrence that, an RFP would ask for particular types of partnerships. I mean, this whole thing doesn't operate without partnerships. It's a partnership between, we're asking DOC to partner with an education institution. We're asking the education institution to abide by the accrediting agencies' guidelines to be accredited. This whole thing is a massive partnership. So why would we be against adding an additional partner that the experts that you've brought to the table have mentioned would be a good partnership to have in this already collective group of partners? This entire thing is a partnership. What would be the problem with adding an additional partner?
I think, Stan, I've tried to respond to the question that we don't think that we can explicitly require a partnership to exist. I can just speak from my personal experience at the Department of Education over the last 8 years. The department, and I am not saying this is the exact direction the department is going to go in, but I have been involved in several working groups where the department has reached out to community stakeholders when drafting sub-regulatory guidance, meaning toolkits. I've been involved in several toolkits where there has been input from relevant community stakeholders, community-based organizations, and so I know, at least from my perspective, that there has been those instances in which the department has sought expert guidance.
Let's move to Kim. Or did you put your hand down, Kim? Okay, Dr. McTier.
Yes, can we strike, hold on, I gotta go back to it. Can we strike that barring exceptional circumstances based on the student's convictions?
Vanessa, can you add that as a comment bubble, please? And you know what, I did just notice the time. I think we have a few more sections in this part to get through. Actually, we talked about this before lunch. So we actually talked about a lot of this before lunch. So, but I do want to make sure that we speak to Belinda's comment on the appeals process and the timeline for adding new indicators before 3:50.
Belinda?
Thank you. Super quick. With regards to number 8, I actually want to see, I would like to recommend a period after offers a comparable program period, and then cut the rest, including the same mode of instruction, barring exceptional circumstances surrounding the student conviction. One of my original concerns that I mentioned before lunch was, if there is a student who is currently incarcerated and, the only modality for them is online because of their situation, this school that's there, for example, but then when they are released, they want to exercise their right to be on campus. And I think including the same mode of instruction might it would do harm, which is not what I was planning on doing. And then the same with the exceptional circumstances. I did just want to say, Kim and others, Marissa and others who had mentioned that, I want to say that I'm not minimizing what you had said, but given the complexities with barring the box and things on an institution by institution level, I think it would empower the students if that language is not there, so that if, for example, a student felt like they were being inadvertently discriminated against by an institution for whatever reason, barring the box or whatever, that the student gets a chance to exercise their rights. And I think if we do include that might prevent that. And I certainly didn't want to cause harm. And then super quick with number 7, I just wanted to double check. This is under that one section where at the very beginning we have the stakeholders and all that kind of listed that Ed had actually put there, correct? So I just wanted to make sure that while 7 hasn't necessarily taken into account what the subcommittee had recommended for that, I just wanted to clarify it. If I'm understanding what Ed has done since lunch, is that the stakeholders in that at least I can only speak for myself, that I was thinking of with reentry services and things of that nature, that there is perhaps that language at the very beginning there with outside stakeholders, that opportunity to include that. So that's it for me. I know we're really pushed on time. Thank you very much.
Dave, did you want to speak before Dr. McTeer to something that Belinda was saying?
Yeah, thanks, Sophia.
Do you mind, Dr. McTeer?
No, I forgot to actually put my hand down.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I just wanted to confirm what Belinda was saying. That language was intended to cover all of these. So all of these are we at the department would expect that the group of stakeholders would be involved in the evaluation of these components. And so that's operationally what we would be looking for to ensure that the institution, that all of this is documented, that involvement was there. So just want to put that out there, that was intended to address all of these at once.
Angie.
Yeah, I just want to support Belinda's comment there for that, striking the last part of that sentence.
Aaron?
Oh, thank you for those comments. Let's go to, well, actually we can just stay here. I just wanted to provide some feedback on a few of the other comments that Belinda made before lunch. We got some feedback about an appeals process. We appreciate and agree with the overall interest in ensuring that institutions have some ability to appeal the determinations of their oversight entities. We are concerned, though, that we haven't had time to thoroughly vet any language, including with our federal partners at the Bureau of Prisons. At the federal level, there are substantial legal requirements surrounding how that appeals process can be treated, and we will need to coordinate with the Bureau of Prisons to better understand how any language might affect the agency. So yeah, I'll pause there and allow, because it was Belinda's recommendation, but anybody else can of course comment.
Thank you very much, Ed, for taking that into consideration. I understand that this is a very complex thing that we're rolling out, and I look forward to the opportunity to work with Ed and others in this capacity as we move forward, because I do believe that some kind of appeals process is warranted moving forward. But I do understand that it may not be possible right here. So just looking forward to an email receiving from Ed to kind of talk this one through, because I do think that on the record, I think it's very important to have an appeals process. Thank you very much.
Kim.
Thank you. Really quick, just to jump back up to the piece that that several want to take out on number 8. Would Ed recommend that schools put something in their P&P which would address that last line internally with each institution, so that we have, because I know that sometimes we do reach out to parole officers and run through the scenario with them to make sure that the student is not unknowingly doing something that they shouldn't do to hurt their release. So we would keep it very broad, of course, but we want to have some type of protection there too, because if you read it as is, it would be, I can come there, it says I can come to your institution, you have a comparable program, and then we would have to go to our own internal policies and procedures to explain why. Would that be something you would recommend?
Dave?
We can't offer an exact recommendation for how you might comply with it, though what you described, I think, is the way that we would see an institution ensuring this, because institutional locations are sometimes more independent than others. So I don't want to say that there's one particular way that an institution should comply with this. There may be cases where each of the locations is sufficiently independent that they all need to agree at the outset and each have their own policies and procedures that clearly state that this will happen. But in other cases, an institution that simply has locations that are all sort of reporting up to the main, they might have a single set of policies and procedures that address this. So there's a variety of ways that it could be done, but I think what the department would be looking for is that it's been addressed. And keep in mind here that these are the things that the correctional agency and the group of stakeholders are going to review. Certainly the department is going to come back and evaluate what was reviewed and how it was reviewed, but this isn't necessarily the department doing this. So how you comply with all of this is something that would be primarily evaluated by the Department of Corrections and that group that we discussed earlier.
Okay, thank you, David. We would obviously be very open and encouraged to create an open environment, but we also want to protect the student. And in situations like I mentioned earlier, we have several campuses. Their ability to attend one campus might be prohibited, but they could have other options to attend elsewhere to not be in violation of their probation. Thank you.
Dr. McTeer?
Yeah, so I just want to go on record that just a few minutes ago, with roughly 30 minutes left on the clock, that it was stated that the Department of Ed would need to consult with the Bureau of Prisons and those entities. And here we are, and here I am, have said that from the get-go, we need that representative at the table. And then a few minutes ago, well, probably about an hour ago, Aaron, you mentioned that we had, I believe it's someone here on this call representing the Bureau of Prisons that you all just said y'all did not consult and need to consult. So again, we don't have the appropriate individual here representing that agency. We've said that from the get-go, and we've received a lot of pushback. And I find it very, very interesting that the Department of Ed is now saying, oh, we haven't had time to do it, but we need to do it. I just want to say this. Let me tell you something. I've never known a prison to work in the best interest of anyone, and I'm going to be quite frank. And now to have them do this particular work to work in the best interest of a student trying to better their education. Many of the prisons that I've talked to, or many of the students that I've talked to, have faced so many barriers, have been denied their applications, never get in, because these same prisons are saying, oh, we don't want them to have that education. I don't think that prisons operate in the best interest of individuals trying to better their lives. And we're not going to be, I would be remiss if I did not state that. I don't think that the appropriate individuals are here. I don't think these provisions that are provided in this section for best interest, we're giving all of the power to the prisons. And I disagree with what we're doing and how we're moving forward. The last thing I will say is that many of the prisons I know can't hardly keep track of the individuals that they were detaining. They don't know anything about them once they leave the facility, right? And so now to have them take on educational statistics and all this data, they can't even do that for their own selves. So I'm struggling with all of this, and I just wanted to voice that concern and that opinion.
Aaron?
Thank you, Dr. McTier, for that. I just wanted to, one quick clarification. I mentioned we have a subcommittee member from the Department of Corrections, not the Bureau of Prisons. And Marissa has been with us the entire time, the entire 6 days, and we appreciate Marissa's contribution to the subcommittee. In regard to us consulting with the Bureau of Prisons, I was specifically responding to the points I was trying to make was specifically to Belinda's request to draft an appeals process in the regulation, and we haven't had a chance to talk to the Bureau of Prisons or State Departments of Corrections regarding an appeals process. Keep in mind that the Bureau of Prisons and State Departments of Corrections have the ultimate authority whether to allow a prison education program to function in their in the institutions that they oversee. And so in discussing an appeals process with in drafting in an appeals process, we really have to determine whether the Department of Education, the post-secondary institution, has the ability to require that the Bureau of Prisons allow the post-secondary institution into their facility to offer a program to their students. But I will leave that there. I really, now with we have, it's the 2:40. I just want to go through the remainder of the section. We already talked about this prior to the lunch break. So Vanessa, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down, I just want to make sure that we hit on every point during the subcommittee today. So here, we've already talked about this piece. The department has clarified that the oversight entity is able to, well, while they have to make these determinations 120 days before the expiration of their program participation agreement, they can make the determinations more than that, more regularly than that, if they determine that it is in the best interest of students to make a determination before the expiration of the PPA. Vanessa, can you keep scrolling down?
We have a comment from Stan.
Just one more thing, Sophie. I just wanted to get this out, and we can just open it up for just conversation for the rest of the day, honestly. And this was just, this was adding in. We've added in to the record section the time that institutions must maintain documentation in regard to their prison education programs. That's for as long as they're active, or 3 years following the discontinuation of the program. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a temperature check. I know that there will be comments on this, but what I want to do, I want to make sure that we do a temperature check, and then at that point, we just open it up for a conversation for the rest of the day until we close out. And so if we could take a temperature check on 668-241, the best interest of students, you can just raise your hand and let us know based on the language on the screen, based on the unedited language on the screen. And we've of course added in Belinda's comment about transferability of credit. So that you're also voting on that, but just the language on the screen. Could you please raise your hand if you are not in agreement during this temperature check? Oh.
I have 3 hands up. I have Stan, Dr. McTeer, and Belinda.
Okay. All right, and I think for the rest of the day, we can just, that concludes
I'm sorry, I would like to add Kim.
Okay, I think let's give Vanessa a chance to capture that. And I think we have gotten through the entire document. I think that I have like so many papers here. It looks like we've moved 600.2, 600.7, 668.32, 668.43, 668.38, and 668.40 up into the agreement section. So outstanding sections were 668.235. That's the definition section. 668.236. That is the prohibitions on. That is the definition of a prison education program. So that's like that. That's the main issue there was the prohibition on licensure employment, and also I think we're about to hear some comments on 668.241, the best interest of students.
Okay, let's start with Stan and then Dr. McTeer.
So, in regard to the appeal process, you're saying that you need to consult with the BOP, and then you added also with the state, with Department of Corrections, which was, one of the reasons that I proposed to have Director Precythe join us, which, was a last minute thing, and it was hard for her to join us. But so you say you need to consult with them, yet you didn't bring them to the table on this appeal process, but you're not thinking that you need to consult with them for all of these other things that you're trying to get them to do? Like, how does that make sense? You want to consult with them about appeals, but not consult with them about all these requirements that you're going to have them do in terms of best interest of students and, the other requirements within the document. I just can't help but feeling as if I've just participated in structural racism. I feel like this is at the core of how structures are put in place that promote harm to certain groups of individuals that happen to look like myself.
Dr. McTeer.
Stan, that you done dropped the mic on that one, brother. I agree, because this whole document is a mess, and with 13 minutes to go, I'm not exactly sure as to how much we can really, or even how much we've actually accomplished, because there's still so much confusion, a lot of ambiguity within this document, people not at the table. And we are trying to roll this out, and we're all not in agreement. And I find it concerning that, again, you have experts who are on the ground, boots on the ground, doing this work. You have someone who's running a program right now, myself, doing this work, and we're telling you this ain't going to work. And I just find it concerning that, from the onset of this subcommittee, it's been so much resistance to trying to get the appropriate pieces in play, trying to get voices at the table, trying to get clarity and whatnot, and trying to extend the time even sometimes just to flush this out. And we've essentially been pushed against the wall. And I do feel like while I have been speaking, my voice is still, people hear me, but then they roll their eyes and then just move on because they're going to do what they want to do. It seems like the Department of Ed has made up their mind on the direction in which they want to go, and we were just a formality for this particular piece. And, you know, at times I do feel like my time has been wasted because things are not being heard. Sure, we've made some progress in some areas, but overall, I just feel like this is very muddy and it's still murky. And then even it seems like the lawyers who've been on here, the Department of Ed, they're not in agreement in some areas. And so it's just, I just want to put that out there that I'm not really, I'm happy that we're having these conversations. I want to say that, but I'm still not happy with this document. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. And unfortunately, we have reached the end of our time. So I wanted to put that out there.
Belinda.
Thank you. I just, first of all, I just wanted to thank my colleagues on the subcommittee with this work that we've done together over the last 6 days. I did have a question for Ed with regards to, and I know that Aaron will send an email to Stan and myself and CC the subcommittee members as we get ready for December. I just had a quick clarification about process that we could expect to see, the subcommittee members could expect to see in December. And I just wanted to clarify, I think, Aaron, you had mentioned that after, you know, Stan and I do a presentation in December, all the main committee members, you know, will obviously have a chance to ask questions and things of that nature. When voting does indeed take place in the main committee, with regards to these recommendations, I think you had mentioned, is it that it has to be 100% consensus with all the subcommittee members for something to move forward? And if that is indeed the case, say for example, there might be some things that are agreed upon in the main committee, but then for example, there may be some things that consensus wasn't maintained within the group. How does Ed move forward, for example, with something like that if there's, you know, one or more pieces where there isn't consensus? Just from kind of a, you know, a layman's kind of perspective here, could, obviously the subcommittee work finishes, you know, now, does Ed kind of take that under advisement and then kind of move forward with things? Does that mean something completely like is dead? I was just kind of curious on, you know, once the main committee, you know, does vote and things of that nature, what potentially happens to the work that the subcommittee has put into here? If you wouldn't mind kind of clarifying that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Belinda. And I wanted to also tell Stan and also Dr. McTier that I heard your comments, and I really did hear your comments. Just to talk about the process going forward. So the package that we've developed here, I think we can say this is what the department, you know, my role here was to kind of hopefully show you what the, you know, what the department would be likely comfortable with, like a package the department would be comfortable with approving. And consensus is 100% for the main committee, not the subcommittee, but the main committee. Everyone on the main committee, I think there's 13 or 14 constituencies, plus the federal negotiator, who is Jennifer Hong, all have to agree. They do a lot of temperature checks on the main committee, and everybody has to vote yes. And I think it's been announced that we will be voting, that the main committee will be voting on things in buckets and packages. And so everybody on the main committee would have to vote yes to the amendatory language proposed in order for consensus to have been reached. If consensus is reached, then the department publishes what was agreed to during the main committee as a notice of proposed rulemaking, and then the public can comment on that. And then after that, with the department drafts a final rule. Sorry, it's not buckets, it's consensus by issues. I apologize. But then there's a final rule that's published, hopefully by November 1st. Well, it has to be published by November 1st because the statutory framework goes into effect on July 1st, 2023. In regards to the subcommittee, I think I know it's getting super redundant, but I just wanted to just to respond to you, Belinda. I know you've heard this. I don't want to make it seem like you haven't heard this, but you can submit. We have general agreement in all but 3 areas, and so the subcommittee members who don't agree in those 3 areas that I mentioned can present the language to the main committee. So it can be more than Stan and Belinda. It could be just Stan and Belinda representing the subcommittee's dissent, the dissent on the subcommittee as well. There could just be emails to them about that. Or it could actually be the subcommittee members themselves that didn't agree with that language, presenting actual amendatory language to the main committee. It does not have to be the package that you see on your screens in front of you. This is just what the subcommittee has developed over the last 6 days. Belinda, did I answer most of your questions? Steve wants to jump in there too.
Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify, so I totally understood everything that you said there, and that particular part wasn't actually my question. I was just curious that, whatever is presented, to the main committee, including, what is kind of like consensus and what is perhaps not a consensus, and letting the main committee know that. I was just curious if there are certain parts of, whether the language that the subcommittee agreed on or the language that the subcommittee did not agree on, that the main committee basically votes down. I was just curious what happens to that language, because obviously it wouldn't go into that, that published document that's ready for, November. Is that something? I just wanted to know if there was any language, whether consensus in this space right now or not consensus in this space is not approved by the main committee. I was just curious what Ed does with that there. Do you guys kind of go back to the drawing board? Do you take it under advisement? I was just curious about that. It was just I hope I didn't muddy that, Aaron, but just a general.
You didn't muddy it. I see Steve has his hand up, so I'll let him jump in there. I think he can just provide a good answer.
Steve, you're on mute.
Thank you. As Aaron mentioned, the full committee will go for consensus votes issue by issue. If there's a consensus reached on the issue, that will be what is put into the notice of proposed rulemaking, unless for some reason the department decides not to adopt a part of it, and then that has to be very well explained. But in general, that'll be in the Imperium. For items where there's not a consensus reached, the department's not bound to use anything, but I can tell you from a lot of experience that the department views the negotiated rulemaking process as a way to become much better informed on how the regulations are written and the pieces that are put into them. So even in prior years where we had consensus tied to an entire package, and consensus may not have been reached, but a lot of the agreements that were reached during that process ended up in the final regulations. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
So with that said, with 3 minutes left, I personally wanted to thank the subcommittee. I wanted to thank Stan. I wanted to thank Terrell. I wanted to thank Dr. McTier. Thank you, Dr. McTier. Thank you, Dr. Piccioni. Thank you, Belinda. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Anne, for being with us. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to speak with us about such an important issue. And I know that you all wanted to be here too. So I think we all wanted to be here discussing these issues. I also wanted to send some shout outs to people at the Department of Education. Vanessa has worked really tirelessly on projecting for us and really keeping up with our comments got intense today. So thank you so much, Vanessa. And Steve Finley, Ronald Sand, Soren Lagarde, Beth, who was with us, our accreditation expert, David Musser. I mean, it goes without saying, this guy is a huge help. Thank you, David. Amy Wilson, who has been running kind of behind the scenes, the logistical aspect of it. Sophia, thank you, Sophia, for being an amazing facilitator. And then Brian Schelling on our first day. There are a ton of people behind the scenes who are, who we have to also send a huge shout out to and thank you. I couldn't list them all, but I wouldn't want to list them all because I don't want to forget anybody and have anybody upset with me. But I think the main thing is to express appreciation for the communities that have worked very hard for this change, and that we sat around this table to help write proposed mandatory language. Our goal was to hear those voices representing impacted students, and we hope at least with these comments that you all gave us, everything is recorded. There's a transcript, so everybody's comments are in stone. They're in writing forever. They're going to be posted to our website. So go there and check those out. So that's it. We got 1 minute left. I'm not going to end early. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. We're not going to end early because I don't want to get an email. Remember, like last time, I don't want to get an email saying we ended a minute early. So we got how many seconds left? Let me see. 20 seconds. So I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything or.
Kim has her hand
I
up.
want to thank you, Aaron, for all of your work on this as well. So sorry I jumped in there, but thank you for your work on this as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, everyone. This has been a great learning experience for me since this has been my first one that I've sat on. It's definitely expanded my comfort zone into areas I didn't really know about, and it's actually increased my interest in getting more involved in areas that I've learned about in this setting. So I would be remiss for my financial aid administrators that I am here for if I didn't ask Ed to be thinking about the FAFSA, all the things surrounding the barriers that students will be. You've addressed them. You've said they're coming. We'd love to hear more about that. And one thing I would like to add in is there's some confusion about what can be included in cost of attendance, since Pell is going to be paying for that. So would that be, the internet services, things like that, the tablets, things like that? What could be included in that? So just wanted to say thank you for thinking ahead of all of that and getting word out to us so we can do this, effortlessly as much as possible. Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. You've done a great job working through a very, I think, emotional, important topic for a lot of people. So I knew it was going to be difficult. I think you've done a great job. Thank you.
Stan?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the thanks to all the committee members, all the people behind the scenes, and Ed. And as was just mentioned, specifically David, I would love to connect offline and talk about what we had mentioned. And that kind of goes for all the other subcommittee members. I would hope to connect in ways that we can support your work. But it's been a pleasure being here with you all.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, with that said, we're going to conclude the meeting for today, and have a great rest of your week.